This is Chapter 9, The Long Road Traveled, Part 4, from a story called The Time-Dilated Generations, by Esteban Gallardo. The moment the alarm blared, its shrill, unforgiving tone filled both Daniel's cockpit and the command control room on the moon. The worst-case scenario had arrived. The sensor drones had detected an asteroid, roughly the size of a van, traveling dangerously close and parallel to Endeavour's trajectory. It was a near impossible threat, a rogue fragment that had drifted undetected, invisible until now. Worse still, the first sensor drone couldn't evade it. Any course correction on its part would disrupt the other drones behind it, potentially throwing the entire mission into chaos. The only option left was sacrifice. The first drone collided with the asteroid, shielding Endeavour from a direct impact. But that wasn't enough. Even with the drone sacrifice, the asteroid's gravitational pull had subtly altered the fabric of space-time around it, creating a dangerous disruption in Endeavour's trajectory. A brutal course correction was necessary. They had prepared for this scenario. They knew it was a possibility, but knowing didn't make it any less terrifying. The only way to survive was an immediate emergency deceleration, a maneuver that would subject Daniel's body to a force that pushed the very limits of human endurance. Ellie's voice cut through the command center in an instant. "Daniel, apply Deceleration Protocol 3. Now!" Inside Endeavour, Daniel barely heard the full message. The transmission had been slowed down due to relativistic effects, but he didn't need to hear the rest. He already knew. By the time Ellie's words had fully played in his earpiece, his hands were already moving. Helmet on. Bioreinforcement compound injected. 5 seconds to deceleration. His muscles clenched as the formula flooded his bloodstream, expanding to shield his organs, blood vessels, and bones against what was coming. "Done," he confirmed, voice sharp and quick. "Running Deceleration Protocol 3 now." The inertial mass drive reconfigured. The helium-3 nuclear engine shifted into an emergency stabilization sequence. 4 seconds. The control room fell into absolute silence. 3 seconds. Daniel braced. 2 seconds. Ellie's hands trembled against the console, her knuckles white. 1 second. Then, hell. The ship slammed into a rapid deceleration, forcing Daniel's body against his seat with an intensity beyond anything he had ever experienced. 50 Gs. Even with the advanced biochemical reinforcements, the pressure was beyond excruciating. It felt like his lungs were collapsing, his vision dimming at the edges, his body teetering on the fine line between survival and oblivion, his mind shattered under the force. Time lost meaning. How long had it been like this? Seconds? Minutes? Hours? Darkness came, then light, then darkness again. His consciousness flickered like a dying star. A part of him, the last sliver of awareness clinging to existence, believed he wasn't going to make it, and yet he had no regrets. If this was his end, then at least he had given humanity a path forward. But it wasn't science, duty, or history that tethered him to life. It was Ellie. It was Leo. He couldn't leave them, not like this. That thought, that love, was the only thing strong enough to keep his body fighting. And then, silence. The force eased. The nightmare ended. The ship had successfully stabilized at 50% light speed. Daniel's body lay motionless in the cockpit. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't awake either. Minutes crawled by before the static-filled screams of Ellie's voice had finally reached him. "Daniel, wake up! For the love of God, please, wake up! Please, 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 don't leave me alone!" Her voice was raw, desperate, filled with a terror she had never known before. She had been watching his vital signs the whole time, but logic meant nothing against fear. She needed to hear his voice. Daniel's eyes flickered open. His limbs felt like lead, his brain like molasses, but somehow he found the strength to speak. A weak chuckle, barely a murmur. "I hear you, Ellie." A ragged breath. "You're not getting rid of me that easily." Another pause, a strained grin. "I still have to bring you that present from Saturn." A gasp from the other side of the line, a sob, then another, then Ellie's voice breaking under the weight of sheer relief. "Forget the damn present," her voice trembled. You are and always will be what I want most, forever." The command center erupted in tears and cheers. But Ellie just held onto the console, whispering his name over and over again, as if she needed to anchor herself to the fact that he was still alive. 15 minutes after the ordeal, Daniel finally felt like himself again. His body had recovered, his vitals had stabilized, and the medical readings showed no lingering effects from the brutal deceleration he had endured. His limbs no longer felt like lead, and his mind was clear once more. Only then did Mission Control allow themselves to breathe. Now that they knew Daniel was truly safe, they could focus on what came next. Ellie's voice came through the comms, steady but warm, the tension from before finally melting away. Command Control to Endeavour. We have new mission parameters for you. Since you've successfully completed 70% of the sun's orbit at 90% light speed, we now have all the data we need. Your next course is set for a controlled return. There was a brief pause, then a note of finality in her voice. Daniel, no more wild rides. I want you home safe. We have enough data to work with for years. You've done a perfect job. Daniel exhaled, sinking into his seat. He let out a small, tired chuckle. Roger that, he grinned at the camera, his voice carrying a familiar, teasing warmth. You don't have to convince me. This wild horse has given me a ride I'll never forget. See you soon, Ellie. The journey back to the moon was smooth, free from any further incidents. Daniel had ample food, stable communication, and plenty of data to analyze from the mission. As his body fully recovered, his calls with home became more relaxed. He laughed with Ellie, shared insights with Mission Control, and most importantly, he talked to Leo. At only 10 years old, Leo Green had just watched his father achieve what no human before had ever done. His excitement was boundless. His father was a real-life hero, and yet he had no idea how close Daniel had come to never coming back. The truth of the near disaster was kept between a select few, those who needed to know in order to improve the technology for future flights. For everyone else, the mission was flawless. The reality was different, but the illusion served its purpose. Humanity needed hope, not fear. When the Endeavour touched down on the moon, the reaction was overwhelming. A grand celebration awaited him. Almost every single person had gathered to welcome him home. This was more than just a successful mission. This was the moment that changed everything. Doors that had once been closed were now wide open. The stars, the true distant stars, were no longer unreachable. Humanity no longer had to settle for the crumbs of the cosmos, for the barely habitable worlds orbiting red dwarfs. Now the galaxy itself was within reach. For 2 days, both the moon and Earth's underground cities celebrated. Ellie, of course, found herself thrust into the spotlight, much to her discomfort. It was her genius that had made this impossible dream a reality. She couldn't escape the recognition, nor should she. Humanity needed to honor those who ensured their survival, and Ellie had just drastically increased their chances. Daniel, always close to her side, helped her endure the endless parade of admiration. He couldn't have been prouder. His near-death experience hadn't changed him fundamentally, but it had deepened his appreciation for what he had. For Ellie, for Leo, for the fragile miracle of being alive. As the first night of celebration drew to a close, Daniel finally granted Ellie's wish, an escape from the spotlight. She was supposed to give a speech, but instead they vanished together into one of their favorite places, the observatory. It was a quiet, sacred place. A vast projection of Earth stretched across the ceiling, a beautiful, ghostly blue sphere, a constant reminder of what had been lost. A silent vow to reclaim what had once been theirs. In the empty observatory, it was just them. Ellie turned to face him, her eyes filled with a storm of emotions. Then she kissed him, deep, fierce, desperate. When they finally parted, her voice was shaking. Please, don't leave me again. She closed her eyes for a moment, fighting back the memories. The horror of watching him fade from consciousness, the helplessness, the raw, unbearable pain. I never imagined how painful it would be to watch you slipping away. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't stop it. The pain was unbearable. Too much. Way too much. Daniel cupped her face, his fingers gentle, warm, grounding her. His voice was quiet, but filled with absolute certainty. Ellie, it was you and Leo who kept me alive. It was your love that pulled me through. I won't leave you. Not ever. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his thumb tracing along her cheek. But you know I had to take the risk. It was me or no one. And I knew your contingency plans would work. You're smarter than you realize. And I'll be here to remind you of that. Forever. Ellie exhaled a soft, shaky laugh. Then she wrapped her arms around him, burying herself in his warmth. They stood together, bathed in the ethereal blue light of their lost home, savoring each second of this fragile, beautiful moment. Yet, deep in her mind, Ellie already knew this would not be the last time. The achievement they had just made was monumental, but it was only the beginning. There was still so much to do. Still, she pushed the thought away. Not tonight. Tonight, nothing else mattered except Daniel. Tonight, she wanted him, needed him. Tonight, humanity's salvation could wait. That was Chapter 9, The Long Road Traveled, Part 4, from a story called The Time-Dilated Generations, by Esteban Gallardo. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.